All right, we are going live here. All right, welcome to the Rabyd Atheist. I'm your host, Ed Rabyd, a former pastor turned atheist, now compassionate anti-theist. Welcome to my channel. Today, I just wanted to, it's a midweek live broadcast. I think I'm going to start doing these as well as the Rabyd Reflections on Saturday, just to kind of, keep the channel going. And I find live streams from a preparation point of view are a little bit easier because I let you guys kind of direct some of the discussion. So just a few things to get out of the way. First, I want to thank Asho for being a member for 13 months. Thank you very much. Asho was my first member, and he's made it to 13 months, so thank you. And I can already address somebody's comment more directly. Nothing so far. Just got started. The question today is, why is an omniscient God so inept at providing evidence? And yeah, that's probably it. That's probably it. Yeah, that's it. The beauty contest. I don't think anybody won though. So the basis for my question is because I was considering whenever I do like my series that I'm working on with the life of Christ, I always get theists that come in here and talk about, how I don't accept the evidence that exists and things like that. But my issue is, okay, if there's an omniscient God that's inspiring the Bible, for instance, let's take that case. Why doesn't their omniscience do them any favors? Why doesn't it help them? Because if you're the omniscient God, what the criticisms are going to be of your Bible, of your holy book. So why doesn't God use that omniscience to inspire the Bible in such a way as to answer those criticisms? Okay, for instance, I'll give you a for instance with the Gospels themselves. The anonymous nature of the Gospels, for instance, is a real problem because we don't know, there's no direct statement of who wrote them. That's a big problem because we can't corroborate anything with that author. If we had the author's name, who they were, that would actually give them some credibility. But we don't even have that. We don't have this label of who wrote the Gospels. And if God knows, the omniscient God knows that that's going to be a problem, why doesn't he just whisper in the ear of these people as they're writing Gospels, hey, make sure you note your name. Okay, give your name, what your relationship to Jesus was, include some starting notes. I mean, Luke tries to do this a little bit, but he doesn't name himself. So the question, why is it that the omniscient God, knowing what the future is going to be, I mean, you could take an open theist view and be propositional with that or absolute with that, like a Calvinist or even an Arminian, theologically speaking, in Christian theology, for instance. But somehow that doesn't do them any good. Okay, it doesn't do God any good because he knows what the modern criticisms of the Bible would be if he exists, and he's omniscient, but he doesn't do anything about it. Okay, he doesn't inspire the Bible 2,000 years ago as such a way to answer those criticisms, which would go a long way, by the way, to proving that it's inspired. I mean, to me, the Gospels would be far more authentic and proven if they were inspired in such a way as to say, hey, authors, give your names, give your relationship to Jesus, tell us what your research methods were, what you looked up. Give us, when you highlight a story in your Gospels, who are the people that witnessed that story? Give me their names. Okay, at least give me their names. Because if they did that in the Gospels, you would at least see that they're trying to present a historically accurate case of what Jesus did. And they're trying to give you as much evidence as possible to prove it if they did that. They don't do that at all. And it seems weird to me that an omniscient God who knows what the criticisms of the Bible are going to be, who knows what the criticisms of his holy book are going to be in general, wouldn't provide that evidence, wouldn't give that evidence to us so as to head off the criticism before it even happens. The anonymous gospel problem wouldn't even exist if all the gospel writers had named themselves and told us what their relationship to Jesus was. Okay. So, let me ask her the very moment, is everything going according to God's plan? Okay. Yeah, that's always a good one. But it's I don't know. I just find it, one of the problems that I used to deal with as a theist was this very problem. I said, if God knows what the criticisms of the Bible are going to be, why doesn't he head them off at the pass? Why doesn't he eliminate them before they even cross a person's brain? The Gospels could very much, even based on the historical standards of their time, been much more verified than they are, but they're not. You have various historical events, like the book of Acts is completely up in the air. The Old Testament, it's really kind of weird that they don't, if this is an omniscient God inspiring this thing, to me, it speaks very much against the inspiration of God in the Bible at all. Yeah, I agree with you. I think that what was happening is these guys were collecting the stories, but they didn't really see it as history. I think the actual gospel writers may have been believers, but they weren't trying to collect these stories for posterity's sake other than for the church itself. And so, but that's the problem though. If God is the one who's inspiring all this, he would have realized that the gospels are going to be taken in much a greater vein than they are, but they're not. Okay. He doesn't do it that way. I just don't, the real problem here is if there's an omniscient God and he's the one that's inspiring the Bible or the Quran or whatever, it doesn't seem to really come out, okay, that this view of the future of what the criticisms would be. Okay, let's answer those criticisms. God inspires his writers to answer those criticisms before they even happen, so they don't happen. God seeing all the possible criticisms of his holy books, he could head all that off at the pass, but it never seems to happen. And so what it really does is, to me, this question really kind of undercuts the whole idea of God inspiring any holy book. Because if that's true, if an omniscient God is inspiring a holy book, it would be written in such a way that everybody's objections would be dealt with. Everybody's thoughts would be dismissed. You can't do this. So, and it just, I've been dealing with this a lot on the channel because people are like, well, what do scholars do? Well, the first thing scholars don't do is when they hear a claim like, oh, God inspired the Bible, they don't accept that automatically without evidence. You got to do more than say my Bible says that it's inspired to a scholar. A scholar is going to say, no, I can't accept that. I've got to accept what's in front of me and give, good observations. It comes down to, I did a stream about higher critics. Yeah, I guess I am. Yeah, I know. I see. One of the real problems that I have on a personal level is how long it took me to get out of this shit. Okay. And, so I don't know. I don't get it. Okay. Anymore. And it's kind of, I don't want to say it's embarrassing because I get the power of indoctrination and I get the power of that stuff because I used to do it. So it's like, I don't get how I understood this as well as I used to. I get it, but I don't. Okay, I understand it, but I don't get why I was there. But it's the issue here is where there are gaps in. I think you hit to something real substantive, though, is there's gaps in what the Bible tells us that undercuts its inspirative value. It takes a while to understand that, because I'm like, okay, if I'm postulating an omniscient God, there should be answers to my questions in this Bible if it's the Holy Book. It's you begin to realize, okay, well, God would have known this question is coming up. Why doesn't he answer it in his book? And when you're a Christian and you're going through this deconversion process and you're trying to get a hold of this idea, it's like, oh, yeah, okay, there's a problem here. So, yeah, I mean, it's a question that the reason I'm asking this question today is it's not just an answer to all the people that say, well, where does the criticism against the Bible come from? It comes from the fact that it's like, if this is an omniscient God, there should be answers to my questions in the pages of the Bible, because God would have anticipated those questions and inspired his writers to write that, or he would have written it himself to make sure there was no mistakes instead of leaving it in human hands. But it seems to me that always these holy books are written by humans. And maybe that's why there's so many flaws in it, and they didn't anticipate certain questions. So, yeah, I mean, this is the most important question, the why. Okay. Why does God leave stuff out? Why does he not answer questions that seem to be very basic? You're an omniscient God who's looking at the future. You see all the possibilities of the future, and you literally don't answer the majority of questions that come in the future. Everything's wrong. Okay. It doesn't deal with anything. Yeah. The order of creation is wrong. Let's see. Yeah. This is the other thing that I don't, Rimmer brings up a great point to those that don't believe in the first place. It's still so much a part of your culture. You're constantly engaging whether or not it's worth believing in Christianity or not. And then after a while you go, no, it's just not worth it. Okay. And this is the effect that religion has on society that we're still fighting against, and will be fighting against probably long after we're all gone. I don't see religion disappearing, but it's trying to get, the order right, getting things so we understand, okay, this isn't even worth pursuing. It's why I became an anti-theist. Okay, a compassionate one, but an anti-theist nonetheless. I just feel that we waste a lot of our time. And it's this question of the omniscient God not providing good evidence that for people who are asking certain questions about the Bible, about Revelation, about God, about the universe. God doesn't seem to, in his omniscience, really see any of that. Okay, if the Bible is God's word, if the Quran is God's word, where is the glimpses of the actual future that we're living in now that he's actually addressing? And so I have to come to the conclusion that maybe such an omniscient God doesn't exist. Okay, because there's no good evidence for his existence in his holy books. Okay, there's no, I got it again these last 2 weeks, but God has proved in these prophecies that came to pass. And I'm like, yeah, okay. One, they're as general sometimes as horoscopes, where you can just make a general statement about somebody's future and it can fit 90% of the people that read it. Or it's post hoc, you're looking at an event and saying this event fulfills this prophecy in the past. And so, to me, the whole prophetic utterance thing just disappears too. And it seems like if God was actually inspiring the book, if he's an omniscient God was inspiring these prophecies, he would provide a hell of a lot more details so you would know exactly which prophecy is fulfilled by what event. Instead, it's left to interpretation. And so that undercuts that as well. And so I asked this question. I know there's some theists that'll probably watch this later or sitting there listening to it now, and they're going to make all these comments, but it's like, how does that show that your God is omniscient? How does that show, it seems to me like prophetic utterance in the Bible would have such details, you would know when the event happens, nobody could deny that that's the event that fulfills that prophecy. But the prophecies are so vague, you can literally interpret them into anything. When I used the example earlier, the gospel writers, we're all the critics are like, yeah, but we don't know who wrote them. Well, that's an easy fix for God, who's omniscient. Hey guys, just put your name and what your relationship with Jesus was at the beginning of your book. Okay. It's like, there's just if God is omniscient and you look at like the Bible or the Quran or different holy books, it's like, if you're postulating an omniscient God, then he would know what the criticisms of this Bible would be. So he would inspire it in such a way that the criticisms would disappear. This is another good point. If we were to say that the God of the Old Testament is the same God, he's not the kind of guy that likes to hide himself in the Old Testament. In the Old Testament, he seems to be rather out there and in front with everybody. All of a sudden, these days, he seems to be hiding. Okay. I don't know. It seems to me that there would be a lot better answers in the book. The book portrays Pontius Pilate in a very negative manner. Well, there's some historical accuracy there. A lot of the Jews didn't like Pontius Pilate, the real one. Josephus doesn't have a lot of nice things to say about him, as I recall. So, but yeah, it seems strange to me that this omniscient God that everybody postulates can't handle modern criticism. So I just don't. This is the question that this is one of the questions when I was deconverting that I was constantly wrestling with, is why is an omniscient God so inept at providing evidence when he knows what the future is going to be? Okay. He knows what the criticism are going to be. He knows what the critique of the Bible is going to be. He knows what, higher critics are going to say. So why doesn't he provide an answer for those higher critics within the pages of his very book? He knows what the historical standards of evidence are going to be in the future. Why doesn't he ahead of time do that? He knows what science is going to discover in the future. So why isn't some things like the cosmology of Earth line up with what reality we found? I mean, it would have been a very interesting proof that the Bible is inspired if in Genesis 1 we have, a spherical Earth rotating around the sun. Okay, that would have been way ahead of its time when it was written. Okay, and would go a long way to saying, oh, these guys got something right, long before anybody knew this stuff. But no, it's not there. Okay, it's like this omniscient God, his omniscience doesn't give him any advantage in dealing with his critics. Yeah, that's true. Yahweh is not, he would sulk and go away. These people aren't doing what I say, so I'm going to remove my protection from them and just let them suffer for a while, and then I'll come back. He does that in Judges a lot. I agree with you there. But yeah, I constantly get flabbergasted to this day that theists don't see this. This was something that I wrestled with constantly as a theist, is the attributes of God in relationship to revelation. It's like, it seems like if God has all these attributes, his revelation would be a hell of a lot more convincing. And, he would know that it needed to be more convincing if he's going to truly have all people become saved, as 1 Timothy 2:4 says, and come to a knowledge of the truth. If that's his desire, his genuine desire, then he would do it in such a way that nobody could deny that this was the truth. So there you go. I don't know. I guess, yeah, it's one of those things that continues to bother me, that theists can't see it. It's like your God is supposed to be X, but then again, the evidence isn't really there for that. Okay. It doesn't seem, and his omniscience is really one of those things that really does that, because if God knows all the future, either propositionally, as an open theist would say, or absolutely, as some other theists would say, then he would know what needs to be done in order to convince people. But he doesn't seem to do that. It's almost like he doesn't exist. Okay, it's almost like he doesn't exist. And that's where I was like, man, this evidence for the omniscient God just isn't there. And the Bible actually gives me good examples of why it's not there. It just doesn't exist. It's just not there. So that's kind of my thought for the day. Let's see. Let's see. There's not sure if there's any other questions or comments that I really want to address, other than I did notice what, even before this live stream was started, somebody accused me of being dishonest just by asking the question. You're asserting that the omniscient God is inept, and that's dishonest. It's like, no, I'm making an argument, and you haven't even heard the argument yet. So I don't know how you label me as dishonest. Okay, it's like you haven't even heard my argument yet, and you're labeling me as dishonest. That's awesome. I don't know. I don't get it. I'm now. I was talking with my therapist last Wednesday, and one of the things that I brought up to her as a concern was, am I losing my ability to empathize with how I used to think? Have I been out of the faith long enough where now I can't see what I used to see? Okay. And on the one hand, I'm kind of glad of that, because my mentality is in a better place, I think. But at the same time, it's like, I like to relate to theists when you're talking deconversion, because I do get a lot of theists coming here struggling with their faith, and I want to be able to to reach out with them with a lot of empathy. And so I don't know. It was just something I discussed with her, and her response was, yeah, you're probably getting to the point where you don't relate as well to theists as you used to. Despite the fact that you were in this for 20 years, you just don't relate as well as you'd used to. And it's, on the one hand, it's helpful. And so at the other sense, it's like, I really work to make this channel something that helps people that are deconverting, because I know that there's not a lot of help out there. I do recommend therapy if you were like in this deep fundamentalist stuff. Yeah, you need to get some help. But for a lot of people, it's just they need somebody that's talking their language and bringing up stuff. So it's going to, yeah, I mean, I was there once upon a time, Randy. I was very, it's, it, it's something that I used to relate to really well. I guess I've gotten to the point where I don't relate as well to people that are still deep in the faith anymore. Maybe I relate to people that are deconverting, like yourself. Maybe even at the beginning of it, I understand the struggle. But at the same time, I just don't relate to theists that are still in the faith as well anymore. I just don't. It's become it's a good thing on the one hand, but trying to form that connection where you're like talking about these things, it becomes more and more difficult over time. And, getting back to our original question, this is one of the questions I think needs to be asked of people that are still in it. Okay, why is your God, who's supposedly omniscient, so inept at providing evidence for himself, for his Bible, for the historicity of Jesus? Why him knowing the future, what was going to be? Why is this so so hard for them. Okay. So it's, it's that. So, I don't know. I, it's asking these questions that keeps me going, because I think theists need to be cornered. Tomorrow I have a video on another, I'm going to be dropping another reaction video before I head off to work tonight. And it's another anti-atheist propaganda piece. Okay. And I feel like that is something I definitely can react to very well. And I'm like, I used to make these arguments. Okay. I used to say this shit. And now I realize how bad it is. And so I'm feeling better about myself in the fact that I'm getting out of the religious indoctrination more and more every year. But at the same time, I want to go back and reach out my hand and pull other people out of the pit too. So, and it gets harder and harder to do that when you can't empathize as much. But keeping engaging my human empathy, I think these questions bring up that stuff. Hey, listen, Randy, I am always happy if you're struggling with your stuff and coming out of stuff. I'm always happy to answer your questions. In fact, I don't want to alarm my members, but when I see somebody who, I usually give my members priority when I address their comments. I want to hit them first. Um, so it's what I want to do with all of that is pull people out of that. Okay. But I put people that are deconverting even ahead of my members, because I get it. Damn, I get it. Okay. I absolutely get the struggles you're having. Okay. Because I've been there, I've been there. Yeah. This is kind of, I think I was in a stream. I've chosen the title for my book that I'm writing. I had to go back and start rewriting it a little bit again because of the theme, but it's like, sorry, I can't go back. Once you've seen behind the curtain and realize it's not the great and powerful Oz, it's a dude pulling levers. Yeah, you kind of get past it. And so my title of my book is going to be Sorry, I Can't Go Back. For that reason. I agree. I do think it would be the worst kind of torture. My problem with heaven is I think it's worse than hell. Okay. Uh, I just can't fathom living forever worshiping a psychopath, a psychotic God that wants him have all the worship directed towards himself. I just I don't get it anymore. Um, the idea that God has to sacrifice his own kid in order to appease himself, it's just, what a weird way to think. Okay. I don't get that anymore. And I think that's kind of what me and my therapist were hinting at, is that I've gotten to the point where the doctrines don't make sense at all. Like, they really don't make sense. So yeah, it's hard. It's really hard. I don't know. I mean, I'm gotten to this point where I'm looking at my channel. I'm looking at a lot of things of what I do. I've been very reflective. I'm getting ready for 2025, which is going to, as an American, is going to be an interesting roller coaster ride, I'm sure, given the current state of politics in America. But and I have another video I'm probably going to release Friday on that, where I've taken a week or and a half or so and thought about things, and I found, I was perusing some of the reaction to the election, and I ran across Stephen Wolford and Rationality Rules, and he did a piece on it like the day after the election. I'm like, I might be good to kind of go back and forth with him, theoretically speaking, whether he would actually talk to me is another matter, but just going back and forth with his ideas and saying, you might have a valid point. I appreciate people's viewpoints on American politics that aren't Americans, because it's often very enlightening what other people think about us. So, um, so Yeah. Yeah. Heaven for the weather, hell for the company. I don't know that. Yeah, I mean, you don't, it's going to be the perfect temperature. I can live with that part of it. It's just, I don't know if I want to hang around people that just want to worship God all the time anymore. I don't want to do that anymore. I'd rather, a lot of the most interesting people that I've ever read about, if hell exists, that's where they're at. Okay. And I'd rather hang with them. They have a much better good time and they're not taking themselves so seriously. I guess that's one attitude that really, I never realized how much I took myself so seriously when I was a believer. Now it's like, yeah, you're just kind of a dumbbell sometimes and you get things wrong and you're not so special that, you can't, you're not this child of the king thing mentality. And you get out of that and it just it does humble you quite a bit. It's like, okay, I'm just a guy walking around on planet Earth, an insignificant little planet of blue, little blue dot, um, you know, in an insignificant galaxy in an insignificant corner of the universe. It's like once you get over all that, it's much much better. Oh, an exorcism. Hmm, that would be interesting. I recall a movie I once watched when I was still a theist. Um, what was it? What's the name of it? Saved. Um, and in that movie, they have a drive-by exorcism where some of these girls grab the main protagonist and start casting out demons out of her as they jump out of a van. What is this? A drive-by exorcism? It's like I still laugh now whenever I hear the word exorcism. I automatically think about that. Um, but yeah, to put the humor aside here, though, yeah, I can understand why, if you think something's so wrong with your kid that you think an exorcism is the answer, yeah, I can understand why that kid would suddenly say, yeah, yeah, mom, I want to get away from you as far as possible. Okay. I mean, it's another example of religion destroying relationships unnecessarily. Um, yeah, true. Maybe they don't get a chance to, they have to worship God or else. So I don't know. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, you can see it. Um, your mother would say you were the devil's son. Ah, David, man, bro. That's bad. Okay. I mean, this brings up a good discussion, I think, of what religion does to relationships. It's not just parental ones either. I remember during my ministry, there was this one guy who was in my church. He was dating a non-Christian woman, and I'm watching their relationship, and they would have been perfect for each other. Um, so, but he eventually broke it off with her because she wasn't a believer. And I'm like, dude, you have great chemistry. You're perfect for each other. But as a pastor, I had to agree with him. But inside, I was like, going, this would have been a perfect match. And I often wonder how many bad relationships people accept and how many good relationships they reject simply because of faith, because of belief. And so, I mean, it's also the parental thing. Yeah, Pentecostalism tends to be full of addicts. Trust me on that one. As a 10-year Pentecostal believer, yeah, I lost track of. I knew a lot of the men, for instance, were abusers. I knew a lot of women who were addicts, men who were addicts, kids. A lot of youth in Pentecostal churches want to dabble in quote unquote sin. And so they're always the sneaky radar sinning type, under the radar type sinning all the time. And their parents sometimes catch on, sometimes don't. But Pentecostalism is full of hypocrisy. I used to watch it every day. Um, All your teachers tell you that? That's awesome. How strong? How can the devil have so much power over them? Yeah, that's one of the great contradictions of Christian theology. Um, the antagonist, the devil, is built up to be this big thing that has a lot of power over you, but that kind of undercuts the omnipotence of God. They'll make a free will defense. Rimmer's way ahead of me. Is like, yeah, it's the free will defense at that point. Well, God's allowing you to make your own choices. Um, that's kind of that thing, where they bring up their excuses. I really think apologetics really genuinely has become excusegetics, and we should probably use that term more often. They're just coming up with excuses. Welcome, Evan. Who has more religious friends? I've definitely seen the subject account. Well, if you or she isn't as religious as I am in the same way I am thinking, yeah, it's we try to make our religious thinking line up. When I was in the faith, it was always about I should have relationships with people that had the same level of religiosity as myself. And if they didn't, I kind of pulled myself away from those relationships. And now I look at it, I'm like, I probably would have had a better time with a person that wasn't religious. Okay. I probably would have had a better, relationship with them. And I look at religion now as a very detrimental force. Okay. Because of this, because it really reinforces our tribalism. And there's a lot of people that I could have branched across and shook hands with and gravitated towards that would have probably been very good for me. And maybe I could have been very good friends with them, even as my autistic, antisocial self. And yet I didn't because of faith. And my religion says, don't be unequally yoked with unbelievers. And so therefore it's like anybody who's not a believer, I'm not really supposed to have a relationship with. That's a good one. And I don't know. I now see this as something that is so damning, okay, to religion. Oh, it is, Evan. But yeah, you make a very valid point, Evan. It's how many relationships have been destroyed because of religion? How many relationships that could have been great are never entered into because of religion? How many times are we forced to stay in a relationship that is toxic because they believe like we do, and that's the relationship that is loud? I lost track of the number of marriages that came across my desk as a pastor that I'm like, if it wasn't for all these doctrines about marriage, I'd tell them to get divorced because they're just toxic for each other. But I couldn't do that. Not the way my church, not the way my Pentecostal church interpreted it. They took that even further because it doesn't really talk about marriage in that context. It's not. It wasn't just applied to romantic partners. It was applied to other things as well, like any relationship that you would have. So in my Pentecostal days, that was very much, who are you having? Don't, bad communication corrupts good manners, things like that. So don't do that. It's like, so what? Hey, Brent, I'm very sorry to hear about that. Maybe you might want to conclude that there is no God to protect you. Okay, that he doesn't exist. Um, you know, if God is genuinely compassionate, he allows a lot of evil shit to happen and does nothing about it, which really undercuts whether or not he's really a loving God. If I'm standing in the corner and some girl is being sexually assaulted, I'm going to go and try to stop it. God does this every day where he stands in the corner, he's there, he watches it, and he does nothing if he exists. I would have to conclude that he probably doesn't exist. Okay. Or he's just not benevolent. Okay. Yeah, nice claim, no evidence. You do this all the time, Paul, but you never provide evidence for this. In fact, there's a lot of evidence against it. As Brent shows, God drowns millions of kids in the Bible. People die every day crying out to God, and God doesn't help them. Yeah, yeah, David, I relate so well because our Pentecostal church is like, find Christian contractors, find Christian doctors, make sure you're forming those relationships with Christians. And if you find out somebody's not a Christian, don't form relationships with them. It's something that came up a lot when I was a Pentecostal pastor. So, so there's that. Yes, agreed. Not only girls. If you need therapy, Brent, try recovery from religion. I have a link usually in most of my descriptions of my videos. Try them. It's how I found my secular therapist, who is also an atheist. You have to still be careful because the problem with Christian therapy is they infiltrate so many things. So you have to really check with that. But check with them. Okay. Recovery from religion is a good place to start. Maybe they can help you, maybe they can't, but at least it's a start and you can try. So, but I would recommend them. I think their link is in my description. So, yeah, thank you, asshole, for posting the link. Appreciate you. But yeah, it's a good resource for a lot of us who have, like I have, religious trauma syndrome, and I also have PTSD from some of the threats I received while I was in the ministry. And so that's what I'm dealing with my therapy sessions a lot. I've gotten a lot better. So yeah. David, you're relating to me very, very well. The whole anoint people with oil and lay hands on them so the sick will recover. Oh my gosh, did that happen to me so many times? And did I have to do it as a minister? Yep. Yeah. Yeah, I've heard of them. David. Yeah, they're very, very much like that. And I mean, we're dealing with a subject that's close to all of us. That's deconverted heart. Because now that I'm an atheist, a lot of my family and friends are still theists. And so, what do you do with that? Okay, it doesn't come up as much as you think it would, but I find that I'm overly sensitive to it sometimes, and it really does create a problem from time to time. And I have to talk in therapy about that as well. So, yeah, most like Jehovah's Witnesses and the Mormons, they have very extreme views on who you interact with. Okay. It's funny how fundamentalists always want you to stay inside the smaller group and not go outside of it. It's like they're afraid. Okay. It's like they're afraid of, if you get out of there, you might get exposed to some sort of idea that might undercut their faith or cut their argument. So, yeah, it's one of the deconverted assets. If you come out of a fundamentalist side of things, there is absolutely this trauma of isolationism that keeps it down. Not likely. I mean, you can keep praying to a non-existent God, I guess. That's your business. I mean, it's your imaginary friend, I guess. But I was speaking earlier about the title of my book. Sorry, I can't go back. It's like seeing that the great and powerful Oz is actually some professor behind a bunch of levers. Once you realize the human origin of the Christian faith and there's no God to it, yeah, you can't go back. So, so there's that. Yeah, the Worldwide Church of God. Yeah, it's very apocalyptic. A lot of them are. Oh, Aso. Should I thank Aso for his prayers to Batman? Should I thank him? Inquiring minds want to know. Yeah, Randy, all of us are that have been through this are very concerned with Brent and his daughters. Yeah, dude, that's a rough one. You guys need some real therapy and stay away from Christian therapists. Okay, get some people that are going to deal. They're going to take apart. It's therapy is hard because they take apart what you are and give you a real close examination of different parts of who you are, and then try to put you back together. It's a long process. It's a long process. So yeah, my feelings are going out for you, Brent. I definitely feel for you. I used to see that in the all the time. Oh, slightly used. Yeah, I guess. I'm not dissing Batman at all. He's one of the few DC characters I actually like. The rest of them I don't really like. I'm more of a Marvel guy, so. Um, but Batman is one of those few exceptions. I loved the Batman animated series when it was on in the '90s until they got to the fourth season. I hated the fourth season, but um, yeah. Whichever vigilante you like better, sure. Spider-Man, Batman. Oh, you guys are great. I always love the chat. You guys are awesome. You have my kind of humor. Um, but yeah, my heart is going out to them, to anybody who goes through this stuff. Having come through it myself. Yeah, when you're in my last church, I had a guy who was a former cop who would always kind of, I'm a cop. If you mess with me, and don't do what I want in the church, it could be a problem for you, pastor, kind of thing. And it's like, I don't need that kind of crap. And that's why most of us got rid of the idea of a Sky Daddy coming in and helping us. Okay. Someone coming to your rescue is a very childish idea. Okay. It's not always going to happen. I haven't seen that one yet, so no spoilers, please. Yeah, me too. Hey, Brent, um, just so you know, a lot of people have been through what you've been through. I don't, I know it feels really bad and it feels really alone-ish, but, dude, we feel for you. Okay. I spent a lot of time praying for my three kids that harm wouldn't come to them. And no matter what I prayed, stuff happened. And that's because the God I was praying to doesn't exist. I'm very sure that the Christian God doesn't exist. He's too logically inconsistent. Um, but yeah, I'm just saying, get some help wherever you can find it. Keep looking. Recovery from religion is a good place to start, but keep looking. Don't give up in trying to find help. Okay, because it's out there. You just got to find it. Hey, Earl, good to see you. Um, yeah, mine too. When I suddenly realized that religion and being a Christian was childish. Okay, I'm going to put away childish things. Well, I'm glad you got some humor to you, Brent. Trust me, humor carries you through a lot of the bullshit when you're deconverting. Um, yeah, yeah, yep. Yes, it is. It, Yeah, getting therapy is a very good thing. I can definitely speak for its benefits. Yeah, this is the big thing with therapy. You don't have to fix yourself. You just much like you can go to a doctor and get help in fixing what's wrong with you, your brain, your emotions, and stuff can also be treated. Okay, and once you realize that, uh, so there's that. I just want to, it's I always try to encourage people that have experienced a whole bunch of things and had a crisis of faith, go get some help. Especially if you've gone through some trauma. It's just something that I advocate for so strongly now. This is the thing. That's why I recommend recovery from religion as a starting point, because they literally try not to have recommendations that are believers. Okay, especially Christian therapy. Oh my God. The ease in which somebody can call themselves a Christian therapist is ridiculous. There's really no standards other than you say you're a Christian and you have some sort of something degree that says you're a counselor. It's just totally stupid what they call one. Yeah, yeah. I can see this. I see this so much. So I see it. Yeah. And we got another testimonial from Randy. Yeah, therapy works. Um, it's something that from the time I started this channel, I've been advocate for. Um, you didn't think I'd put this one up here, Azo, did you? I will. Yeah, there's a lot of. I think I've heard of her. Um, do you? Are you sure? Okay. I mean, I try not to be offensive. Okay, in that sense to believers, but no, I think the problem with offending people like believers is you're going to offend them sooner or later simply by saying I don't believe your stuff. Um, so there's that. Um, so yeah, but yeah, I mean, it's been a good stream tonight, guys, but I've got to go get ready for work. I figure I'd pop on here for about an hour and talk. The main question, if you go back to the beginning of the stream, was why is an omniscient God so inept at providing evidence? And I think we had a pretty good discussion on it about how God being omniscient doesn't seem to help him when it comes to his books. So there's that. But I do have to run because I got to get ready for work. But you guys have been great as usual. And it's been a really good stream. So thank you very much. And as always, I want to thank everybody for stopping by. I appreciate all the likes, shares, and subscribes. Make sure you hit the like button before you leave. And as always, live your best life. You only get one go around and then it's over. And so you want to take all your time, money, and opportunities and spend them on yourself, the people you love and care for, to make this a better world. And don't waste them on the trappings of religion and faith, because that's a dead end. I speak from experience. And as always, guys, thanks for stopping by, and I'll catch you next time.